leaps and glides and slides across the floor, right through the door and all around the wall. A splash, a splash.
So we're getting ready to do the live show spectacular, which is a very interesting group this year. I'm going to introduce the team members. On the far side over here, when I say your name, you're going to raise your hand, although in some cases it's going to be self-evident. Here's the team from Majestic's Princess Fantastic Journey. They are the recipients of the live show spectacular on a limited budget. Carrie Lovegrove, creative director at Princess. Danny Treason, creator, director, and choreographer of this year's Fantastic Journey, and Bob Bonial, designer and digital wizard from Mode Studios. In the center, in this side, representing the spectacular Camel bells from the Huaxi Cultural Tourism Resort in Xi'an, is Senior Vice President and CTO of ACE International, Bingo Zhou. And in the center, from Osaka, Japan's Universal Studios, to present their AOA award-winning Spectacle Night Parade, our Senior VP of Entertainment for Parks and Resorts, Mike Davis, and his colleague from Universal Studios Japan, Project Director Matthew Preston Jones. Okay. Now, it can't have escaped your notice that this is a very Asia-centric group of projects. I want to start with the spectacular Legend of Camel Bells. That's all right, I got it. Which is the third in a series of legend shows, and this one the largest in Northwest China. Bingo, would you like to come up and tell us about it?
Thank you. I'm Bingo. I'm coming here to present to you just a recent project that we've done, completed last year in Xi'an, the center of China. It is actually a story about the Silk Road. I'm sure you heard about this name a lot. Silk Road, there are actually several Silk Road period of time in China. The first one comes in about 2,100 years ago, starting in the Han Dynasty. The second one is in Tang Dynasty. Tang is a very well-known dynasty for China. We sometimes, with Chinese, call the Tang people. So you will have this Chinatown, this reunions, this Tang man. And the third one would be on the sea that started around 1421, which is by an admiral, Zheng He. So he traveled from the center of China to Taiwan, Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Hainan, and then Malacca, and then Middle East. So there's three typical major Silk Road. I'm going to talk about the second one. We start in Xi'an, where is the center of China and the capital of China. Here is it. It's a fantastic journey. It was in the 8600 so. It is quite an unknown place between China and Europe. But because of this bereavement, the countries between China and Europe are all prosperous because of the trading. This is a Xi'an site where it's actually the center of China. Xi'an is a very important capital of China. It has been dynasty it's a capital of dynasties, many dynasties. We are honored to be part of Xi'an, the Huaxia Cultural Tourism Group. Huaxia is a big group of company, and we work with them in this kind of tourism theater. This place is a typical China we call PPP, is a kind of a combination of developing the properties, tourism, and cultural activities such as this show. This land is about $450 million US dollar investment. It consists of a grand theater and water park and hotels, restaurant, water world. We are talking about this, the round dome is like an indoor stadium, which is the theater. It's about 1/4 of the investment of this total area. As you can see, this is like a dome. This dome is about 142 meter times 128 meters times 50 meters high. Is quite big and indoor dome. The audience in the center is a 50 meters cycle. It consists of 3,000 seats. The theater is a complex of stages. It totally has 6 stages, and the audience itself can be rotated, and it go back and forth, as well as the stages. There are many changing positions, machinery. So it's always moving show. Other than the stage mechanism, it's very complicated because it's obviously 3,000 seats is quite big and heavy. The challenges is the sound system, the lighting system, and video system, or the stage mechanic had to work together seamlessly to provide a seamless and smooth experience for the customer. So we are showing you some scenes. We start with the first scenes. The first scenes is actually the ending scenes. However, it changes the environment. The first scenes is about the people are gathering and preparing, going to in this journey, and then their homes, the wives are expecting their husband return. Of course, they're sad because during that time, going to such a journey, meaning is a very brave journey. It's almost like a suicidal bravery journey into the unknown. It goes through difficulties, obviously. There has been rain, fire. Oh, I understand there's a song of rain, fires, ice and fires is coming in on the 14th, right? The Game of Thrones. I'm a fan of it. So it's like a similar experience. So, although we go through the ice and fire, we end up with happy places. We go to the Middle East and Europe's many countries. In the journey, we go through different kind of cultures. Here is Buddhism. Obviously, there's a big Buddhism statue, but they have also many different other cultures that our braveries experienced. At the end, of course, some come back and some didn't. The join to the loved one is the most spectacular and romantic moments for their loved one. And also, they have the glories, and these Camel braveries is actually the machines that go into this. They are being received by the emperors, and which in that time it's a very high honor. The whole theater I was mentioning is always on the move. So this is we have a miniature model. This is 50 meters with 3,000 seats. As you can see, it is turning around, going back and forth to the stage, and stage is also changing. With this changing, so you can enlarge the audience scope. You can really change the scenes upside down because the audience is moving to other places with a lot of automations and machinery going together, so the audience can experience such a journey that never before. Technical specification, this is 3,000 seats moving back and forth, 6 stage with 7 scenes. LEDs is massive, more than 4,000 square meters LEDs. The waterfalls contains of 2,000 tons, and a lot of speakers, a lot of lights, and a lot of videos. To show you how large is some of these scenes, for instance, this Buddha, it's come out from the ground, and it's come 20 meters high, and the scene is some 40 meters wide. Some problems. Any sound guy in this hall? Soundman? One? Yeah? Right? Okay. In a dome, no acoustic treatment, everything's metal, because of the fire regulations. And the owners said, Bingo, we want to try something really natural. We don't absorb any sound at all, okay? My eyes is bigger than this cat when I know. We were trying to build a gigantic stage with a lot of helps. Some of the helps comes from the Huaxia groups because they're specialized building large metal like bridges. Indoor stadium, in fact, the whole indoor stadium and the stage, the large stage, is built by themselves. So we are kind of creating thing like a family. We are not subcontracting to other guys. Starting from the first beginning, we were working like a family alike. There are others challenging that obviously when the stage is changing. All the things you have to change within so that we can get the audience should not feel they are moving. They only have to experience from scene to scenes. And the speaker has to be either flown or ground stack because obviously you don't want the audience seeing the obstacle to obstruct the viewing. And the stage monitor is also difficult because it's so wide and you don't want the scene. You have a monitor speaker in front of you. So we're trying to hide these things. The speaker system flowing consists of 12 lines area. It is kind of we're trying to build one system to fit in all these stages and while it is moving. And we are trying not to be any kind of sound system. We're trying to be any kind of system. Namely, it's a mono, it's a stereo, it's 5.1, it's 7.1, it's multi-channels, so that we can fit in the scenes. When they experience the changing from scene to scene, they also listening to the 3D sound, immersive sound, because the sound can really give them a feeling of the space while they are watching in front of them the scenes. It's quite big. The phone from one of this hanging speaker line array is about 40 meters, 50 meters, depends on where you are. We have two suspend cluster hanging in the center. Let me explain why. So it's like that. We have around of the top, we also have the centers, two centers, because when the stage are shifting, you have different locations of acoustic center, and you have to deal with the phasing, delay, reflection from the screen, reflection from the dome. So we tested, we tried outfield. Well, our staff is really hard working because all day their work is take it down, take it up, take it down, take it up, and trying different locations. I know some of them are really pissed off. But it was a happy ending, I'm sure. So it is kind of, if I may explain, it's like a 5.1, then you have left center right is easier, but you can see there's also other speaker as a complementary, so you have the immersive, but also there's a speaker on the stage. So this start to make sense. So there's 5.1, 5.1, 5.1 plus plus, 5.1, 5.1, 5.1, 5.1, 5.1, and this is the stage. And we have fun field because the stage is moving. We have to make sure the sound and image as they are working together. We don't want the sounds sounds like from the back. Well, of course, there are a lot of sound. There's dialogue, there are musics with effects, sound effects. But we have to take care of all that. There's also ground stack. It is a little bit hard for us because the size of this revolving stage is not very high. So we are kind of cannot hide them inside the wall. So we are putting speakers or smaller speaker alongside with the TV. This TV are for the subtitle. The stage monitor, we use it is surround. The surround also being built, installed around the stage. We have some stage monitor on the stage when they're rotating, they are shooting to the stage, so the performers, the dancer knows what they do. And like such a wide stage, obviously you cannot put a speaker in front of them. So we have to try to hide them inside the buildings, inside the machinery, inside the props. So this is the stage monitor shooting from the audience to the dancer. And you can see this is the top and the size. Equipment being used is normal sound system. You have consoles, but every pieces of this controls equipments are redundant. Sometimes the redundance acting like a additional input depends on the switching. How do we do queuing? The queuing and the DSP equalization is going through a BSS London, and the speaker system For the lighting system is also very complicated because you're changing. They work together with video. So when you going through, some of the image is following along and the lights have to be seen. So the audience wouldn't notice they themselves are changing. So it is kind of bar by bar, bits by bits, and frame by frames, iterations. We took a lot of time. This is the workstation that we have on-site post-production as well as sound effect system editing at the background. The lighting and view system, they work together. It's a MA together with Arcos. So we are able to do MIDI synchronization, time code synchronization. But on this show, most of the show, like AVL, were done by manual. Because the change is so much, the producer, the directors want to improve all the time. They're changing all the time. So synchronization is very difficult to do because once the scene is cut out 2 bars, the others has to follow. So there's no time for it. So it's a manual working system. Summary. So communication, because obviously there's so many groups of people. System tuning is difficult. On-site post-production is very important because obviously what you record in the studio, you cannot reproduce it in such a difficult environment. It's very difficult from the studio environment. And we talk a lot, communicate a lot, system tuning, well, we don't go through this. So if we can improve this, then acoustic obviously is going to be a big part of help. And we would like to have more time to do anything on size changing. We have a very unique show, so we were really happy to be a part of it because it's very rare opportunity that you have such a show to do. And it's a full cooperation like a family. Everyone's worked together, and we got a chance to work with a lot of talents. And this is my team, which we are bringing here. Can you please rise? Please sit. This is my team. We are ACE, and I am Bingo. Thank you.
Thank you, Bingo. Thank you, Bingo. That is, later somebody has to ask him about the wolves and the camels. Next up, we have Mike Davis, Matthew Preston Jones, and they're going to give us the inside story on the Spectacle Night Parade.
Well, thank you all very much. It's a real pleasure to once again be honored by this great organization, and all of the staff and the team in Osaka are more than thrilled to be acknowledged for the work that they spent so much time on. Today I'd like to kind of take you through some of the highlights of all of that. So one of the things that we want to do on a project overview is tell you a little bit about kind of what made the parade. And it was a great challenge for us because we've done a lot of parades in Japan, and trying to find something that is unique and different was a challenge for us. So I think that if we give you some of the details, there's 15 floats in this parade. There are 54 projectors that are positioned around the parade route because we're actually combining the live performance of the floats going down the street with performers, as well as projecting onto the buildings, all of those buildings different, with animation that was created especially for the parade that puts you in the more enveloped and complete environment of the parade experience. There's 100 performers that are on the street along with the floats as they move down the route. And as is oftentimes the case in these large productions, there's more people backstage preparing than there are maybe the people that perform actually in the parade. So we have over 107 people that are in that support staff every night. This project took us about 4 years, and I have to tell you, in my 40 years now of working in this terrific industry, I've never had that project that's taken 4 years. But this was one that just had so many exciting challenges to overcome that it just took us a great deal of time to work our way through the invention and innovation of delivering something that tied to the vision of our creative and director of the project. And at the end of the day, there were over 1,000 different people and vendors and consultants that helped our USJ staff bring this parade to life. And I thought maybe now I would show you a bit of just a clip for those of you that have not seen it or be aware of it to understand exactly what the parade looks like. Part of a project process, and everybody has to go through their version of a process, and I have to say that the most important thing for me is making sure that we pick the right team of individuals for the project. And so I'm not sure why it's not advancing, but it's not. Here we go. First off, it starts with the creative team. Really, really important to these kind of projects, and we could not have done any of this without our director in Japan and also the creator of this wonderful experience, Kaori Kanaya, who really had the vision and the passion. And Kaori, if you're here, will you please stand up and be acknowledged? Yes, she's here in the back. And of course, we had Noriko Kanai and Ishida-san and also Norm Kahn from here in the US that all worked in the production team. Matt Jones, our project director. And trust me, all of you that work on big creative projects, it's one thing to imagine how it can be. It's one thing in your mind to create and design. At the end of the day, you have to be able to build it, and you have to be able to deliver it. And we could not have done this without Matt's Herculean effort of helping us get to the finish line. So thank you, Matt. Of course, Brian Stonestreet was our designer. Paulie Jenkins did all of our lighting design. Morris Costumes in Japan helped us with the terrific costume design. Bart Krisha of Bart Krisha Design helped us with all the projection mapping. And of course, music, which is important to any parade that we do, was created through our association with Paul Freeman and Bob Wackerman of Audio by the Bay, and specifically Alan Silva, who is our composer and arranger and orchestrator for the show. Another part is trying to decide the theme of what you're going to do. And of course, in Japan, it's always a challenge to try to figure out how can we represent America, how can we represent the West, which is the universal brand, and present it to a primarily Japanese audience. And so trying to find ways to just kind of frame what we would do, because there's so many wonderful creative choices with art that's out in the world today, we decided that a couple of key words with our marketing staff were very important. One was that it was the best, and as we say in Japan, besto. And of course, our brand is about Hollywood. And so sometimes it seems a little simple, but we started off with the Best of Hollywood parade that became the Spectacle Night Parade, the Best of Hollywood. optional ideas. We use a lot of different IPs in the different major shows and activities that we do at USJ, and we actually reviewed over 18 different major movies, trying to find what's the right one that will translate well. A lot of great product, but it's got to translate scenically into floats. It has to make sense in a parade moving format, and so it took us quite some time to go through that investigation process. And then making the final selection of going through the painstaking, which one of all those great 18 films that we looked at could we land on? And of course, we landed on The Wizarding World of Harry Potter, the Transformers, Jurassic World, and of course, the Minions. And these are some of the early renderings that kind of led us into making the decision that we wanted to use these particular IPs and these particular stories to bring to life in a moving parade. And one of the great visionary things that I think Calry was able to do was to say, if you think of how most night parades are done around the planet, maybe starting, at least in the US, with Bob Yanni's Main Street Electrical Parade back in the 70s, it typically was turn off all the lights and watch through lighting fixtures and almost a dot matrix points of lights to let the parade glow for the audience to see. We wanted to try to move that forward and saying, let's present these movies in more of a theatrical sense and use more of a theatrical lighting approach, where it's not just about points of light, but a way of really enveloping you along with the projections as if you're in that movie experience. And so, as you can see from some of these renderings and some of the costumes, that we were trying to blend all of those things very much together. The 54 projectors that I talked about on the parade route, we had to design the creative content of each of these 4 different IPs supporting the floats and the story against all these different buildings, different paint color, different architectural sizes and signs, windows and awnings and things that you had to actually digitally map against so that you could get those images. So that was quite a Herculean effort for us. And also we found that it was important to make sure that you could deliver, which Matt was just again, champion of helping us do, but deliver the creative content in something that you knew you could depend on. There's a phrase that I've been trying to use with the staff in Japan the last 3 or 4 years, and they got pretty tired of hearing me say it, but we would be in the next phases of creative as we were working through things, and I would go, okay, it's time. What's the PAD? And they'd go, Mike-san, what does that mean? I said, well, the PAD for me is the practical application of the design, because we're in the business of delivering things in a real sense, at least in live entertainment, every single day of a 365-day operating year for tens of millions of people. And so for us, no matter what the creative vision was, no matter what we would want to do, that we would hope to do, you had to get practical at some point that wasn't really doable. And so as a part of our process, at some point in the creative, we have to stop and say, let's talk about the practical application of design. And you have to make the decision early on, and we've been given the great freedom in Japan to do this a lot over our first 18 years of operation, is pushing for innovation. And I think one of the things you always have to do in the creative process is make the decision if you're going to follow or if you're going to lead. And I know that sounds like that would be a very easy choice. I mean, if we're going to be an industry leader, let's lead. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk in some of the leading types of things that you want to do. And at the end of the day, you have to be able to deliver those things. So you have to measure that risk. You have to look at those things. And sometimes in that process, you have to say, maybe this component of it will be something that's already existing, it's already proven, it's already operationally feasible. We know that it's tried and true. And there's some other things that maybe we want to push that envelope. Maybe we want to try to be the ones that lead in that effort. When you see the size and the complexity of the floats that we design, and the new audio system that we put into place, where we control every speaker along the route. There's no sound zones any longer at USJ. We have a virtual sound zone that we can change because we had 4 different IPs that were running down the route with 4 different soundtracks. A lot of parades historically have a kind of a theme song, and you can do variations. But because of the way it travels down the route, it's very difficult to do different songs. And in this case, we created a system that allowed us to actually travel the music specifically different with each of the floats and the sections as it went down the route. And that was an important part of leading forward in a thinking of how we would deliver this type of a concept. The other thing was we spent a lot of time talking about Transformers. Great, powerful movie. Everybody on the planet knows it, particularly popular in Japan. We want to deliver it in an exciting way. But part of the challenge was, how do you do that? Because in the movies, the Transformers do their thing in like 3 or 4 seconds. And so we spent a lot of time talking about how we're going to deliver. Should it come out from backstage? Should we stop the parade? Should we just bring it out? And we came to the conclusion back when we were deciding the IPs, they didn't take that movie franchise and call it the giant robot movie. They called it Transformers. And we made the very important creative decision that if we couldn't have at least one of the Transformer robots transform in front of the audience, that we should skip that IP, because we wouldn't be delivering to the audience expectation, which is something I think you always have to keep in mind when you're creating. It's nice to make yourself feel good about, hey, I thought up something that no one's ever done before, but people have heard me say for a long time, and I'll continue to always say it, the first rule of show business is know your audience. And if you know your audience and your audience knows that it's called a Transformer movie, then you better be prepared to make something transform in front of their eyes. So in our parade, our Optimus Prime figure, the latest of technologies of robotics, large robotics moving, activating on a moving float, actually goes through the transformation process in about 31 seconds. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. This was some of our early projection mapping that we were doing with Driller going through some of the buildings. That's the site of the T2 building in New York. And that's the wind, because it was a very windy night when we were testing this. But this gave us a chance to kind of see how could we manage the dynamic of the Transformer movie in the environmentalization of what we were trying to do as the parade goes by. And so we picked this location to help us kind of figure out exactly how we could feel comfortable of making something extraordinary happen when the parade's going by and you feel like it's all around you. The other part that I talked about a little bit earlier was Optimus Prime. Well, this is a test we did with Optimus Prime, and that's a slightly larger than scale figure that we just had to do a proof of concept. How can you make all of this work? And so we decided to use the technology of projection and mapping onto a float and onto a figure. So this was an early test we did of just looking at some basic robotics that would let us say, number one, the head of Optimus Prime can come up, it can move left and right, what are some of the axes by which it can do its work? And of course, based upon these angles and the shape of this, we did this in a way so that it would be what we thought would be an excellent projection surface to accept the dynamics of what the Optimus Prime figure looks like in the movie. So then we took it to the next test, which was we put it in a room and we lined up some projectors to kind of go, can we really project on something like this and make it look real? And so this is a video that shows a little bit what our first test was like as our proof of concept for this particular. And this was Optimus Prime in a small studio in Southern California, and letting us realize with just, I think this was with 4 projectors, we were able to feel as if the concept of using projection on a moving item is something that we could do, and it took us a lot of time and technology to further that process, but this was what helped us kind of push that envelope when I talked about us trying to lead. Memorable moments. People always want to know what were those things that were very important to you. Well, one thing was deciding on what the final IPs were, because we went through so much time to do that. Number 2, of course, the Hogwarts Express, Optimus Prime, and the T-Rex were some of the big components that really pushed the envelope in a float design for us. Recording at Abbey Road Studio with a 80-piece orchestra for all of our Harry Potter and major music, and we also did some additional sessions in Vienna to make sure that we had the full movie soundtrack. That was an exciting project for the staff. Seeing the projections for the first time on the parade route and knowing that every single time we projected, it had to be basically the same image, basically the same color, but the surface we're projecting on were completely different in every case, so it took a lot of fine-tuning to make that happen. This is the studio we recorded at in Vienna. The first time we saw the Hogwarts Express come down the route was a really, really thrilling moment for us, just on the size and the scale of it. And you may see here in the bottom right corner, that's a 747, where based on the timeline of trying to get everything finished, we were forced to hold schedule to actually, when the floats were built in Florida for the Jurassic World section, the only way to get them here in time was we chartered a 747. Matt, thank you very much. Matt took care of that. That actually flew them to Japan for us so that we could stay on time for our opening. Some final thoughts. One of the things people always talk about are lessons learned. I think what I found on this project, as I've found on virtually every project that I've had the pleasure of working on over the years, is that it's a team sport. It really comes down to picking the right team. I started my career as a casting director for Disneyland Entertainment back in 1978, where I was auditioning singers and dancers and actors and musicians. And at that time, it's always, how do you find the right artist that's correct for the show? And I find in my career now, at this tenure and over the last 20 or 30 years of being an executive producer, the lesson learned is always put the right team together. And it's a team sport. It's not a solo process at all. And so I think on this particular project, we were able to assemble a terrific world-class team that worked together to get us to the finish line. Recommendations. Well, I think the thing that I had talked about a little bit earlier, I would continue to share with you. First off, recommendations is know your audience, no matter what the project is. Who are the people that are actually paying the money to buy the tickets to come to your park, your exhibits, whatever your experiences are. You really need to make sure that you're understanding what their expectation is and you can deliver to that expectation. What would you do differently? I probably would spend a little more time with the staff trying to make sure that we just kind of held it together, because it was a very, very challenging process for us. And then my best memory, I think the best memory for us was just that opening day when we had everybody together and realized all these years of hard work really came to a terrific conclusion, and watching, as for many of you in the shows and attractions and events you do, was getting the guest experience and realizing that everything we had done led to that moment for them to have a great memory. So I hope that you will continue to fight those same kind of challenges, and know that we will continue to try to do everything we can to push the creative envelope at Universal, particularly at Universal Studios Japan in Osaka. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mike. That was a fabulous presentation. Thank you, Mike. And finally, in the live spectacle section, we have an amazing flight of fancy created in a self-contained shipboard condition while the new Majestic Princess did a shakedown cruise around the Mediterranean before heading to Asia for her maiden China Sea cruise season. Remember, this AOA recipient did all that you're about to see on the limited budget of just under $8.5 million US. So take it away, Carrie, Danny, and Bob Boniol.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As Pat says, my name is Kerry Lovegrove, and I am the Director of Creative Development in the Entertainment Department at Princess Cruises. Yes, we are the original Love Boat. That's the first question I usually get asked, and we will be singing it at the end of this presentation, so get ready. I produce all of our in-house productions, production shows with our singers and the dancers, and I also ideate and manage all of our other programs and events around the ship, along with managing our other partnerships as well. That's the one I should be on. I've been with Princess for almost over 30 years. I started out as a performer, a cast manager, dancer on board the vessels. And then I moved into teaching our performers on board our ships, moved into casting, and then whilst I was in the office, I started thinking about ideas of the production shows, knowing that I knew our audience and what they wanted, which is obviously a recurring theme amongst us all here, know your audience, and just started to continue producing the production shows. We are truly appreciative of the recognition bestowed upon us for a fantastic journey on the Majestic Princess, and thrilled to represent the cruise line industry, which is basically a floating theme park when you think about it. Our goal with Fantastic Journey was to design a visually immersive show with a pulsing lineup of contemporary pop songs to an audience that we had never catered to. We learnt a lot on the journey. Majestic Princess was our first purpose-built ship for China in 2017, sailing from Shanghai, and our challenge was to create the entertainment product in all areas of the vessel that would appeal to this clientele of guests. Princess is a global cruise and tour line operating a fleet of 17 ships carrying 2 million guests each year to more than 360 destinations via 3-day cruise up to 120-day world cruises. So you can spend all of that time with fellow passengers on board. Princess is under the umbrella of the Carnival Corporation, holding 110 vessels through 10 different companies. It's a big business and it's growing by the day. You may know Virgin have come out with their cruise lines, the Ritz-Carlton are coming out with cruise lines, so the industry is getting bigger and bigger. Unlike land-based entertainment, not only do we take our guests to these amazing destinations, but we also bring the destinations on board our ships, creating programs that bring authentic experience to our passengers. For the Majestic Princess, all our entertainment product was designed with our Chinese guests in mind, from the production shows to the guest entertainers to the music, the movies, the youth programs, lectures. It was a huge undertaking that we had never done before. We dabbled in it a little bit by some of our vessels going around that area in certain deployments and also from our world cruises, but we've never dedicated all of our product to our Chinese guests. So for us, with our production shows, we're going to, I called upon a veteran of Princess Cruises production shows. Danny had created during his 11 years with us, he had created many shows for us. And I knew that he would be the right person to push us creatively, make the show visually exciting and fast-moving, which we knew needed to satisfy our guests that didn't really speak any English. Jackson Lowell, who'll be celebrating with us tomorrow, is a fashion-forward costume designer, and we knew that he would be able to bring Danny's very elaborate ideas and designs to life. So we were excited to have him with us. And then, I got a few little designs, and then moving forward. And then we had Bob Boniel, sorry Bob, from Mode Studios. Their body of work and experience in the entertainment world, particularly with media and also over in China, helped us to create this technical extravaganza. Was a nightmare. So, as we take you through that's some of Bob's work there. And so as we take you through the process of creation, I would love to invite Bob and Danny up here so that they can tap dance in the middle, keep us all entertained. But I wanted you to know that basically our theatre is a rep theatre. We don't just have one show happening in this theatre. There's like 3 or 4 different production shows that happen in this theatre, along with showing first-run movies, lectures, culinary demonstrations. So the theatre is used quite a lot during the cruise. Also, we have to install it during service. We have to perform on a moving vessel, literally a moving vessel. When the ship goes left, we all go left, so we all look like we're together in any case. We also have to be compliant for maritime laws. And because we are a moving vessel, we have to strap down everything. Every piece of set, scenery, wig, costume has to have its place and has to be strapped down so it doesn't move. And what's interesting is this is our scenic door. This is a 9x7 scenic hole in the side of the ship that leads into the theatre and is 30 feet up from the floor. So we always have challenges. So what goes in and what goes out can only be the size of that door. So as we move on, we're going to talk about 3 of our main areas of this show. And one of them is the LED panel doors. So these doors were built by Brilliant Stages, Tate, and Push the Button. And they were definitely the heart of the show. And I'll get Danny to talk about it because he designed this on the back of a napkin. And this is what we ended up with.
Thank you. So what do you put in a show? As you can see, there are no restrictions at all at Princess. And the most important thing to celebrate was this ship was actually being built for China, and they were going to be the first ones there. So the show needed to have a celebratory feeling to it, and it had to be high in energy. And as with everything on a ship, it's unlike when you create a show in Broadway, Vegas, you'll create your vision, and if someone finds it relatable or attractive, they'll come. But here, your audience has already taken that leap of faith. They trust that Princess will feed them the food they like, and they will stay in a room they like, and they will see entertainment that you've made for them. So it's really important to kind of make each and every person think, oh, this show was actually made for me personally. So with that in mind, I really delved into what was resonating over in China with our ships that had been there, and what did they love that we could offer. And when looking at songs that chart really high, things that stream heavily, what's really popular, I ended up with such a wide, a true variety show. Everything from flamenco dancing to emojis and social media, and drones to opera singers, and boy bands to, well, boy bands, because they love those everywhere. So I thought, okay, this is great. This is a true variety show, but I still want something to connect everything. And I've always loved the quote, when one door closes, another one opens, because I think when we apply that in life, it just gives us such a sense of optimism and excitement of what is to come. I thought, well, what better way to close on one scene and make the audience anticipate and wonder what's going to be behind the door for the next. So that's when I drew 6 gigantic doors on a napkin and thought, okay, I want these to fly around the stage, be choreographed just as much as the singers and the dancers, and really be able to redefine the space, create different environments, different shapes for us to perform in. And so then in doing so, I said, well, okay, how are 6 doors going to look different in each and every scene? Because we need to be in a fiery inferno flamenco, but then I want to be, somewhere more subdued for the opera. So that's when we started talking to Bob about the magic he could do.
Well, and I have to first share the credit for the magic, because I was fortunate to take on this project with my partner, Butch Allen, who was the co-production designer, and we had the fantastic Pablo Molina, who was our associate video designer, who helped us a lot with the science of this. And there was a great deal of science involved in it, because Danny's ambition for the doors to be entirely performative, it wasn't a situation that I was accustomed to, where we do a scene shift, we're in a scene, something happens. In this case, the doors were moving just as much and with as much dynamism as the dancers were. And they had to be able to transport us to all these different worlds. So what we did was we came up with this idea of the door within a frame, and that the frame could also spin. So this gave us a whole bunch of variations that we could now choreograph with. On one side of the doors, we had hundreds of universes of LED that we could pixel map On the other side of the door, we had a surface that was purpose-built to receive projection mapping. And then what we did is we took the wonderful woman who programmed the doors, Tracy Andronic, and we deprived her of sleep for about a month. Another very interesting aspect of this and the rest of the show is, as Carrie mentioned, the ship is a working venue, 24/7. So what we would do is, first we would arrive and watch that night's production show, which was not our show, and then at 11 p.m. we would load out that show, then we would load in our show, and then we would tech it overnight. And then we would strike it at 8 in the morning and put the theater back into the state it would have to be for that day. So this was the kind of constraints we had in our technical process. We couldn't, for instance, have a situation where we're like, okay, we're going to disassemble the doors because the wiring in them was incredibly complex and just work on them until they were finished. At a certain time, the clock would strike and we would have to put everything away. And the work that Push the Button and Tate and Brilliant did on these doors helped set us up for success. And then the amazing thing was watching how they truly came to life under Danny's direction.
So if the doors weren't enough, we decided that we would put drones on board a metal object that is traveling through the waters. So that didn't give me many nightmares. So we desperately wanted to do this. We desperately wanted to try it, so we contacted Verity Studios in Zurich, and they gave us a prototype that they were working on these 2-ounce mini Lucy drones that they created a program for us, and it was just the most unbelievable experience, and definitely one of the most social media experiences we had. When this number actually comes up in the show, we just see everybody raise up their phones and start recording, which we do tell them not to do, but they do it anyway. So Danny, do you want to take us through that?
I think the drones was really, they'd set the tone with we're the first to build and land in the China market. So then I was like, okay, what else can we do that no one else has done that we're the first at? And we were the first to do the drones on the ship. Back then, drones were around and they were hot, and there had been interaction with performers with drones, but I think it was pre-Gaga Super Bowl diving through them.
Yes.
So at the time I was big on sending a performer up and being interactive in the middle of them, in the air as much as we could. So there was that challenge. There was the doing it in a metal tube. And there was the unknown, there was the land of exploration. If we can master this with Verity, then it's something we can do more in the future. So that was enough reasons for me to try it.
Absolutely, and I love the metal tube thing because we asked them a set of preliminary questions. What are the borders? What are the stopping points at which you can't bring your drones to us? And they said, well, what would be very, very detrimental is if your venue had a lot of metal in it. We said, so the venue being constructed of metal then would be a challenge, and it was. It demanded that Verity actually come up with a whole different sort of guidance and control system that could overcome the issues of the metal venue. The metal venue by the way, which moved. And we weren't just going from destination to destination, we were tilting 5 degrees this way and 5 degrees that way and going up and going down. And the drones had to be able to accommodate this. These were prototypes, they were virtually an alpha version of this product. The product has since matured a great deal, but here's what I'll say about these drones. They work every time. There are 32 drones on the ship. There are 14 in each performance. In the 18 months or so that they've been deployed, we have had very, very few hard failures. There was a point in tech when we determined that the marine navigation radio frequencies were overlapping with the drones, and we would be rehearsing, and suddenly the drones would go crazy. And it was because Captain Sagani was making contact with the pilot to come out and bring the ship in. And we eventually did the due diligence to figure out that this was what was going on. But after we worked out these hiccups, these drones literally fly out of their chargers when the time code tells them to. They perform as they're supposed to perform, and then they fly back off stage. And it's remarkable. And every time I catch my breath when I watch it, not just because of the technology of it, but because Danny put together such an incredible scene with it and around it.
So the other thing that we wanted to do was surround the audience as much as we can in a proscenium theatre with 3D mapping. So Danny, do you want to just talk a little bit about this quickly?
Well, again, it was a first for us, and this show it's always important to me to leave an audience with completely different pictures when they leave the shows, memorable stamps in their brain. And what you're not seeing here is the other 3 huge shows that this lived with. And what dictated the content of this also lives with a Broadway theatrical style musical show set in a late 19th century fairground, and then next to that is an operatic concert that's in a romantic garden. So again, remembering they are 3 different shows, but if they all run in one cruise, you want your guests and your passenger to hold on to each picture and each show have its own identity. So here I was saying, okay, well, we're all LA based. What can we bring out there? Let's take the movies. Let's give them a cinematic experience that we can really put out there and reach out to the audience. And these were the guys to do the 3D mapping.
Bob, quickly.
Absolutely, and that was really about, Danny had a fundamental principle in the show was we wanted to abolish the borderline between what was the show and where was the audience. So we mapped the theater to 270 degrees. The theater was not purpose-built to be mapped because the show was already, the ship was already well underway under construction by the time that this show had been developed to this point. So we had to sort of work with the marine architecture that we had to work with. The raster for the content for this was about 28,000 pixels by 4K. And that presented a lot of challenges in terms of production in particular and remaining flexible when we got on the ship. We were dealing with some scenery that we had feedback signals. We knew where that scenery was, but we had some scenery that was performatively motivated. People were moving it. We worked closely, again, we were in partnership, in this case with Green Hippo, and we worked with them literally to develop their shape software to the point where it could accommodate our kind of insane wishes. And indeed, they did do that. And then we got into the content production, and again, Danny guided us as we created this architectural world. It wasn't wallpaper. What we were doing was literally taking the audience on a journey. And in the making of that content, we explored all these different worlds. We used every trick in the book. Fluid dynamics in some numbers, fire in other numbers. We did an extensive motion capture shoot, which we then used all of that data to run content phenomena so that the imagery was exactly in tandem with the choreography.
So as you can see here, it takes a village to create this, our little village, and we're very proud of it. It was built in Hollywood, Canada, and the UK. We installed it in our ship in Italy, which is where we build all of our ships. We took the Silk Road via ship to Shanghai. We enjoyed food, drink. We didn't have it as hard as your people, let's just say that. We premiered the show in China. We had 48 costume boxes. The panels were too big to be flown, so they had to be put in a lorry in the UK and drove over. And we had a lot of contractors and employees to make the vision into the one lasting premiere that we have, and we're very proud of this show. And I know we're running over, but I'm just going to show you our video.
Fantastic Journey is a show that is musically dynamic, visually awesome, but most of all, emotionally invigorating. We are experimenting with some of the most technological things that we've ever done. The idea is ultimately to drive a very fast-paced, very visual, very exciting show. We're using 3D mapping and aerialists, and we're the first cruise line in the industry to be putting drones in a live show.
We're projection mapping the room out to 270 degrees around the audience, which kind of makes this surround experience. It's very immersive. During the flamenco number, clouds of flames are actually performing a flamenco.
it's a technical marvel for something like this to exist on a cruise ship where everything moves, where everything is temporary. We sort of pulled off an impossible feat.
Fantastic Journey is not only the biggest thing we've ever done at Princess, but it's one of the most exciting shows that I've ever done. And you've got to come and see it because it just doesn't stop.
So we've run over a little bit, so just thank you so much again for this win. We're absolutely thrilled, and we hope that more cruise lines will join into this wonderful organization so we can share more.
Thank you very much, Carrie.
Yeah.
We'll get to some of the... Got it. Great, great. So we have time now for questions and answers, and we have time for people to fill in some things that maybe they wanted to say that they ran out of time on. And I see a runner. There we go. Take it away.
Hello, my name is Trade again. I was very impressed with all the animated technical achievements that you guys have created for your projects. So I was wondering, in the case that these gigantic, technical marvels, which are the stars of the show, doesn't work, then how do you ensure that the audience still have a seamless experience, or that they won't even notice that something is going wrong?
Is that about to break?
Who did you address that to?
Oh, sorry, all of the project.
Oh, anybody. Okay,
Thank you
fine. Which one would like to take it first?
Well, I'll start. Based on what I think I heard you say, because the audio up here is not as good as it might be for you to hear the question, was it about the technical side being overpowering?
No, I was asking that in the case that your show is running into technical difficulties, how do you ensure that the guest experience doesn't get interrupted by these, gigantic technical marvels?
What do you do if there's a technical glitch?
Well, if you're really good, you don't have those things. You design it right, and you have some operational backup plans to do that. I think for us, what we've always found at USJ is that it's really about the storytelling. It's really about creating the environment, and so the audience accepts that first, and the technical should never be in the lead. And then when it happens, you just have to have good operational readiness, and you have to make sure that you have backup plans for all of those things. And even though they're really complicated, for the most part, enough rehearsal and testing time along the way, you can have a pretty good high percentage that you're going to have very few technical glitches along the way. You always have a few when you first open, but I think for the most part, it's about the proper planning up front.
Oh, actually, there's a question that related to that. Have you ever had a failure with the audience turntable?
The turntable, well, of course, there are dozens of failure during the rehearsal.
Sorry, a glitch.
But we have rehearsed a lot. Because every program changes, all the directors want to change the performance. We rehearse a lot, rehearse. Beginning stage during the soft opening, yes, there are some changes. But it is, like you say, it's an environment. It's not about one particular, say, if the stage is moving forward or a little bit slower, then the sound guy, the lighting guy, the vision guys has to coordinate at the same time. That's why we did not synchronize everything by automations. So most of the time are operating by
You're doing it the old-fashioned
engineers.
way, a human interaction.
Yes, human, yes. I think the human can respond to this kind of changes. We wouldn't say it's a failure or it's difficult because there's so many things in the same environment. I totally agree what you say. So everybody works like a team. So when they observe their differences, then they will fulfill to their missions to accomplish these difficulties.
And Princess, if something goes wrong, do you hear about it?
Yes, we do hear about it. I think, you know, from one of our differences that we actually give people a survey at the end of the cruise and they can state what they liked and what they didn't like. But, you know, as with everybody else, we'll have from plan A to Z in preparation if for something to go wrong. We don't have swings or replacement cast members, so we have to make those alterations on the fly. And if something technically goes wrong, we'll generally own it. We have a small, contained audience, so we usually throw the cruise director out there and just own it. Tell them what's going on, educate them a little bit about the show, how technically advanced it is, bring them into it, and if we can, show them some of the technical things that are going on so that they understand it. Because most of our passengers love the backstory. They love to know how things get created.
The behind the scenes is usually more interesting.
Hello, Chris Lang. Compliments on everybody.
Could you tell us your name again?
Chris Lang. I have a question for Mike. You said you had 18 different IPs. How far did you go with, like, did you do the designs for those floats before you ruled them out? Or did you know, okay, there's going to be those 4 and we just designed for those 4 floats?
We certainly did some early designs for all 18 of them so that we could kind of feel comfortable about the creative content of what it was. And a lot of times there's a lot of legalities involved with who has rights to do certain things, particularly in the international environment. So I won't share with you all the 18 things that we worked on, but we worked on some stuff that was pretty exciting, and we did take it to a certain creative level, but then we just had to make some business decisions as to what was the right balance and what we were capable of doing within the environment.
Do I see another hand? Yeah, way in the back. Okay, well, while you're running to him, I'm going to ask Universal a question. You've won AOAs for your nighttime parades before. How did you approach upping your game?
Well, I asked Matt, how do we do that?
So the first foray into night parades for us was a real learning experience. We had not done it. We brought in some talent from other entities that really helped us to find our bearings. I think that the first show was, for us, groundbreaking. It was a big challenge, but this show was more about creating a theatrical spectacle. Mike touched on the lighting that we brought to bear. It's not impixelated, it's more theatrical lighting. The elements that we created for the show quite literally could be used as a day parade. And we have very gentle moonlight in the Harry Potter vignette, for example. We light the rocks on the Jurassic Park floats, which when I first heard we were going to light rocks, I thought that was just dumb. But we internally lit them, and it really made them pop in a way that you just kind of have to see to believe. So there are elements that we brought to bear that I think have origins in stagecraft of Broadway and theatrical that we've never done before. In addition to that, the moving elements, the digital projection that we brought to bear on all of our show sets throughout the whole park, integrated it into one cohesive piece of work that unfortunately we didn't achieve in the first show.
Great, I got that. The question back there.
Hi, my name is Jackson. My question is for Universal Creative about the parade. Just from the videos I've seen, like each vignette you have like tells a story, like the Jurassic Park one, the raptors escape, and Harry Potter, they're fighting the Dementors. How do you keep it so that each guest like sees the story, since the parade is continuously moving? Or are there moments where guests will see only the raptors in their cage and some will get to see it break out? Like, how do you make it so that each guest gets to experience the story of each scene, if that makes sense?
Well, I think the key to that is Cowrie's vision that each story of each of those IPs is designed from its creative content to let people experience on either side of the parade route, but it's not exactly duplicated. And so, because we have a high guest visitation repeat in Japan, and sometimes in our business, we want people to come back. And so we made sure that they always got something, but depending on where you are on the route and exactly what would be happening at that moment, you could get a different experience. And I think Cowrie, who's been with us the last 18 years since we opened the parade, has learned that technique And we've found that people will come back because they'll experience something a little different from the last time they visited.
Also, I would add, depending on where you see the show, it has a totally different feel, has a different presence, so it's really repeatable, and it grows on you.
Princess, we've seen the size of your loading dock and your loading door. Maybe you'd like to talk to us or share with us how much fun it is to have everything you need on board ship before you leave. Oh, and she's shaking her head. No, it wasn't fun.
It's great fun. Logistics for us is, on a moving vessel is one of the hardest things in preparation and planning. We try and do that as much as we possibly can. It's not like if we need a piece of screws or nuts and bolts, we can't go down to Home Depot and get them. We have to wait till the ship goes to a port and find a place to purchase these. But also, we're a floating city on board. We've got engineers, we've got electricians, we've got all kinds of people, crafts and skills on board. So we really hone in to those people. If we need something, everybody works with each other on board. It's like a little mini nations.
Where?
Hello, Austin Andrade from JTI. A question for the Princess Cruises team with respect particularly to the drones and that scene with the drones. My knowledge with drones is that they tend to be relatively loud with the whirring of their motors. Was the sound design for that particular scene, did you guys have any particular challenges when it had to be combating with the noise of the motors?
They were actually very quiet.
Oh, amazing.
And the noise was a bonus because people couldn't conceive what they were actually looking at until they heard it and saw it come towards them. At first, they were sort of wondering, is that media? What is that? Is that light bulbs hanging from the ceiling? And then when they heard the whir, that was when the aha moment happened. So it was a beneficial but not intrusive component, for sure.
To the extent that we actually became concerned that the soundtrack might be overwhelming the sound of the drones, and we might need to elevate that sound to get that across.
Yeah. I see a hand back here.
Hello, my name is Jay. I'm from Shipsomnia. It's a music festival cruise. So my question is obviously for the cruise team. With your productions and your shows, I'm just curious on, what is the threshold or how choppy does it have to get for you to cancel the show? And what are your measures for saying, okay, hey, look, we have to cancel?
Well, definitely for us, safety is our first concern, particularly for our performers on board. We're lucky with our beautiful theaters. We've got automation, fly lines, we've got open floor elevators, pyrotechnics. So really safety is the number one concern. But, we do as much as we possibly can. We work with the captain on board the ship. He'll try and put out stabilizers. They'll try and slow down the ships for us sometimes. But the audience always kind of is more with you when the weather is tough. And actually, it's harder to dance or to stand still and sing or do gentle movement. When you're dancing around on the stage, you kind of don't feel it as much as when you're just standing still. But as I said, when everybody goes left, we all go left.
You'll be surprised as well. The drones actually, they always work, but the ships now are so fantastic. I was watching a few weeks ago, and I sort of looked up and I thought, those drones are a little bit out of place. They look a little higher than usual. They were the only indicator I had, so we called the bridge and they said, oh yeah, there's massive swells outside. But all of us inside had no idea. She was still flying, they were still flying, but this one rogue drone was kind of telling me, oh no, it's a storm outside, carry on. Yeah.
I can tell you that I have yet to encounter the threshold where they tell the tech crew we don't have to rehearse.
There are buckets backstage for the cast members.
We have time for one or two more questions if there are any. Am I seeing any hands being raised? No. Oh, wait a minute. Somebody's pointing. There you are.
Hello, Yael Pardes. I have a question for Bingo. It's about the back of house. How do you choreograph? I know you do the audio, but do you have any insight on how everything was choreographed to fit with all the animals and the people and the dancers? Where does everybody exit? Where do they stay?
Again,
She wants to know about the back of house and how everybody gets around in the back of the house. You know, you got the camels, you got the wolves, you got the whole parade of people.
The audience is actually, they come quite earlier in the pre-show time. When they're steady, then the shows go on. Once the shows go on, the audience are locked at the site because it's moving all the time. And all this animal actors, they are coming always the same path, it's designated path, it's the same route every time, so they never go across. Because if you imagine, there nothing should move. Even the audience they are not allowed to go to washroom, for instance, because it's moving. And one of the important things is, I think every actor, including the animals, they're actor, they're star. They have to play the same role, exactly the discipline all the time. So after months of rehearsing, it's going really smooth.
Thank you, Bingo. And let's give them a big round of applause.